Today's class is dedicated in celebration of Rabbi Fari's birthday. Thank you so much. By Gila and Keith Sachs, Esther Shlomo, and Ronnie Rose. Hazaku Baruch, that is so nice. I really appreciate it. Oh my God, no way, we're related. You are like me, except from another oh my God. Okay. Okay. So, we are up to chapter 4, Mishnah 18. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, we have finally, I know this really sounds weird, but I'm sure some of you are happy that we finally left Olam Haba. We are no longer in the world to come. We are now in the present world learning Pirke Abot together. And we are, so to speak, back. And I think that that's one of the hallmarks of Pirke Avot, that you could kind of shift very, very quickly from the most esoteric, from the most spiritual, to the most practical in one Mishnah, okay? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Rabbi Shimon, the son of Elazar, would say, Al tiratzeh et chavercha b'sha'at ka'aso. Do not appease your friend at the height of his anger, in the moment of his anger. Ooh. We're going to come back to this one in just a bit. Okay? Each one of these is another ooh. Ve'al tenachameu b'sha'a shemeto mutar lefanav. Don't try and comfort him while his dead is lying before him. Ve'al tish'al lo b'sha'at nidro. Don't ask him what he meant when he just swore that he's going to do something or not going to do something. Don't ask him. So let's just drill down into that for just a minute. Can we understand exactly what you meant? Ve'al tishtadel lir'oto b'sha'at kalkalato. And don't attempt to see him or her in the time of their degradation, when they've been ruined, when they are bespoilt. Just because I don't get a chance to say that word quite often enough. Now, I want to just kind of go into each one of these things. But first and foremost, let's try and understand, what is Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar teaching us? I think at first glance, if you look at the commonality between each of these, the most common denominator, the first one is, don't try and appease someone when they're angry. Don't try and comfort someone when they're devastated. Don't try and help someone with their promises or with their swearings in the time when they've actually made a neder. We'll see what each one of these means. And then finally, don't try and see someone when they're at rock bottom. Each one of these is really communicating a very powerful lesson, and that is that Judaism teaches us, not only should you not do the wrong thing, sometimes you shouldn't do the right thing. Because the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. We all know those well-meaning people. God bless them. The right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar effectively is teaching us the supreme importance of being aware of time. If you ask the kids about it today, the millennials, you know what they'll tell you? You know what they call this? They call it being tone deaf. Being tone deaf is, right now you're going to make a comment like that? You're going to post something like that? Can't you read the room? Don't you feel the vibes? Yeah? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is giving you the power of time, of timing, understanding when the right time to do something. And in the words of Shlomo HaMelech in Kohelet teaches us, Et leheshot, there is a time for silence, right? Ve'et, and there is a time, ledaber, there's a time to speak. So let's look at these four constructs, and perhaps we'll glean even more than, even more than you might have originally seen when you read this Mishnah. The Mishnah seems initially to be speaking about 4 specific times, 4 specific life occasions or experiences, but I think we'll see perhaps that we're really speaking about 4 different categories of wrong time. Okay, so let's delve. What does it mean? Al tiratzeh et chaverecha b'shat kaso. Where do we learn this from? Where's Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar's source? So Bartenura, which is the classic commentator on the Mishnah, Rabbi Ovadia mi Bartenura, he was from Italy, okay? And he comments and he says that each one of these ideas has a makor, has a source in the Torah itself. What's the source that a person should not try and appease someone in a time when they're angry? He brings the Gemara in Berachot. The Gemara in Berachot on page 7a says, Panay yelechu v'hanichoti lach. You know, when the Jewish people sin with the golden calf, with the egel, so Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he starts to try and placate Hashem. He tries to, if you will, mitigate the punishment that the Jewish people are going to receive. And God says to Moshe, Panay yelechu, my face will go with you. Again, what that means when you're talking about a being that has no corporeal structure, right? What is God's face? God says, a part of me will be with you, v'hanichoti lach, and I will guide you. But my inner self, my inner dimension, whatever that means, I'm not going to be with you. What God was communicating to Moshe was, right? Hamten, says the Gemara, ad sheya'avru panim shel za'am. Wait until my anger subsides. You know when you take that kid on a family vacation and you tell the kid we're going to go to this place, it's fun for the whole family. First rule of family is there is no such thing as fun for the whole family. Somebody's going to be miserable. Usually the parents. Right? Why? Because the older kids are going to think it's babyish, and the baby kids are not going to think, they're not going to wreck it. Right? That's how it works. There's no such thing as fun for the entire family. That is someone who has experienced that. That was
quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. Explain. Go ahead.
It's always fun in my family.
Always fun in your family. She said facetiously. Okay. Yes. I saw the look.
We're still here today.
I saw that look of, that was like a shir hama'alot look. Oh Lord, save me. Okay? So there's lots of things that are like this. It's just, that is how the world works. Different people, different needs, different ages. That's how it works. You're never going to be able to make everybody happy, correct? So what do parents do? The kid says, well, if we're going to Great Adventures, I don't want to come. Many has been the parent that schlepped that kid and told them, go into the car. The kid goes in the car, and then they're a sourpuss the entire time. And what happens? They ruin it for everybody. Taking someone in a moment of anger, bringing them on board, you know what it does? And this is a fascinating thing about human beings. Sometimes we would prefer to be angry. And when you try and pull me away from my anger before I am ready, I will wind up being angrier about the fact that you tried to stop me from being angry than I was even angry before in the first place. So upset about something, you tell me, stop making such a big deal out of it. Ho ho ho! Before, I was just angry because I would have gotten over it in 10 minutes. But now that you try to yank me out of it before I was ready, now I'm angry at you. I'm angrier at you than I was at this stupid thing. You know why? Because the stupid thing was indeed stupid. And all I needed was a little bit of time to get the perspective that would make me feel that. But you know what it feels like when you try and appease me before I'm ready to leave my anger? Now someone I love is telling me that I'm being dramatic. Now someone I love is minimizing the pain or the anger that I feel, is making me feel that I don't even have the capacity or maturity level to be able to understand for myself what is worth getting angry over. Is this really worth getting angry over? I remember when I was not a parent, when I was a child, and my parents would say very annoying things to me. And there are levels. There are levels of like on the annoya meter that your parents say to you when you're a kid, right? You know, do you remember any of the ones that really kind of get you really riled up? One of the ones that got me riled up the most was, which part of no? That was a good one. That would stir the pot, right? You know what else? Yeah? You're running around, you're about to miss the bus, you know, you can't find your book report, you can't find, where's my briefcase? Where did you leave it? I could have done that myself. Right? Those moments, which are particularly unhelpful, you get very upset. What happens? You become a parent, and then you say those things. Right? I think oftentimes we forget what it feels like to be on the other side of that relationship, of that dynamic. So the first thing the Mishnah is telling you is, you know something? Before you try any other cure for anger, try time. Okay, write that one down. Before you try any other cure for anger, try time. Let it sit. Let them calm a little bit. You try now, all you're going to succeed at doing is getting them more upset. Okay? The Mishnah continues, Ve'al tenachameu b'sha'a shemeto mutar lefanav. Don't try and comfort the person, right, when the dead is sitting in front of them. There's actually a halacha based on this. The Gemara says in Moed Katan, the Gemara says, En hamenachamin rasha'in lomar davar. If you go to a shiva house, you're not allowed to open your mouth and say anything. Ad sheyiftach ha'avel, until the mourner opens his mouth first. So you go to a house of mourning, everybody is full of wisdom, full of things that they are sure will comfort someone who is literally at a pit, at an abyss in their life. And they are sure that what they have to say is so important and so clever and so deep and so profound and so comforting that for sure they want to hear it. Says the Gemara, make no assumptions. Wait until they speak first. In fact, the Gemara in Berachot says it even more shockingly. The Gemara says in the name of Rabbi Papa, Amar Rav Papa, Igra de Betamya, the reward for going to a house of mourning, Shetikuta, is from keeping your mouth shut, is from silence. In some sense, what the Gemara is teaching you is that the greatest comfort that you could give in a shiva house is no comfort at all. No words at all. You know why? Because more than anything else, what a person is feeling when they feel loss is a profound sense of loneliness. A profound sense that no one understands what I'm going through. And I've shared with people before, although I don't know if people quite understand this. Even your best friends who are with you in everything, you grew up together, even your brothers, your sisters, even your family, suddenly the people who are closest to you, who know everything that there is to know about you, you feel as if they have become instantaneously strangers. They don't know my pain. They don't understand it, and therefore, on some deep level, they don't and they can't understand me. Now we really understand the depth of Rav Papa's comment that the main reward for going to a shiva house is keeping your mouth shut. There's an old statement that goes, better to keep your mouth shut and let people think you're a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Do you remember that one? Yeah? Abraham Lincoln. Better, one more time. Better to keep your mouth shut and let people think you're a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Let me amend the words of Abraham Lincoln. Better to keep your mouth shut and let people think you understand than to open it and remove all doubt. So long as there is silence and you're just being with someone in their time of extreme suffering, the person could think that you get it, you understand. The minute you open your mouth and you have all of your ideas, I once heard in a class, the rabbi said, last week I went to Rabbi Farhi's Pirke Abot. He said that Olam Haba is much better than this world. Your mom got an upgrade. Why are you crying? But the one that sticks out for me most in the history of comments in the Shiva house is a comment that was told to me by one of my students, where someone came to her and her mother when her grandmother passed away, and they were crying, and she said, don't you realize that if you cry when someone dies, it means that you don't believe in the world to come? Don't you think your mother, she said to the Avel, would be ashamed to see you now? No! You know what the worst part about that story is? That woman was not trying to be horrible. She was not trying to be crass. She was not trying to be hurtful. Amazingly, she was trying to help. So you know the musar that I took from that story? The musar I took from that story was, it was easy for me to see in that story that opening up your mouth with intent to help can sometimes produce exactly the opposite of the desired effect. So Shlomo, just remember that sometimes when you think you're helping, wah, 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 you're not helping. Al tenachameu b'shah shemeto mutal lefanav. The Mishnah continues and says, Ve'al tish'al lo b'sha'at nidro. What does the Mishnah actually mean on a practical level? Practically, what the Mishnah means is, let's say someone is really upset or angry. They would swear, they would make nidarim. So let's say this person gets me really angry, and I swear I'll never get any benefit from you. I swear I'll never come to your house again. I swear that you make these in a moment of passion, of anger, of upset. You swear that you're not going to do something. You're going to do something, right? One of the halachot is that when a person makes a neder or a shivu'ah, they can go to Bet Din, and Bet Din can do what's called hatarat nedarim. Hatarat nedarim is when the Bet Din undoes the neder that you did, undoes the neder that you made. How do they undo the neder that you made? So when we do it here as a community, we're doing it much more as a perfunctory experience. You know, and in fact, I don't know if you ever realized, but we throw in some interesting caveats into the expressions that we use when we make that communal hatarat nedarim. We say, Ve'en anachnu mivakshim hatara mima'alatchem. And we are not asking for you to undo, O judges of this impromptu court. We are not asking for you to undo any nidarim which cannot be undone. What we do is we take off any questionable ones off the table, and then we're basically asking them to get rid of the easy ones, right? But a real hatarat nedarim, what does it require? It requires what's called pitche nedarim. So let me give you the example. The example is the story of Rabbi Akiva himself. Rabbi Akiva, before he was Rabbi Akiva, was just Akiva. He was a shepherd. Not only was he a shepherd, he hated religious people. Famously, what did Rabbi Akiva say? find me a Talmid Chacham, Leah, and I will bite him like a donkey. Which is, I think is quite a weird thing to say, no matter your feelings on religion. Like, I don't believe in the religion of Islam. I have never said, find me an imam. And I'll bite him like Eddie Murphy in Shrek. Donkey! I've never said that to anyone, even though I don't believe in, right? Why would Rabbi Akiva say that? And of course, there's a very deep meaning in what Rabbi Akiva meant, but we're not going to go into that for today. So he was someone who had a good heart, but he hated Torah scholars. He hated learning. The richest Jews, there were 3 of them at the time, were named Nakdimon Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion you may know from the name of the airport, okay? Ben Kalba Savua and Ben Tzitzit HaKeset. Those were the 3 great wealthy magnates of the time. One of them, Ben Kalba Savua, was the father of a young woman whose name was Rachel. Rachel met this shepherd, and she saw that there was something in him that was special. She could see that he had unbelievable, almost limitless potential. She tells her father, matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a shepherd, right? That's it. Her father says, if you marry him, I'm cutting you out of the will. I swear you will never see a penny from me. She marries Akiva anyway, walks away from, again, she is the daughter of the wealthiest Jew in the world. Okay, top 3, let's call it that. She walks away from everything. She's his only daughter. For a guy not who has become something, who had a dubious past, but a guy who had a past and a present, but a dubious future. She bet the house on Akiva. And Akiva goes supernova and becomes the greatest scholar, not just of that era, but the greatest scholar that the Jewish people have ever had, full stop. Greater even, as we've said previously, than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was the greatest prophet. Rabbi Akiva was the greatest Torah scholar that the Jewish people have ever had. How do I know that? Because it says that when Moshe received the Torah in heaven, he saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was kosher ktarim. He was tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. You know what that means in the Torah? You have those little squiggly lines with the little dot that comes up at the top. Tagim. They're called tagim, but they're also called ktarim, crowns. And Moshe didn't know what they were for. Moshe. And God said there's going to come a scholar called Rabbi Akiva, who not only will expound on all the verses in the Torah, but will also be able to explain why each letter had one of these crowns on them. Moshe didn't know what Rabbi Akiva would know. Okay? Again, how that works, topic for another day. How could Rabbi Akiva have understood something that wasn't part of the corpus of Jewish law, of Jewish Torah understanding, as given by God to Moshe? According to many opinions, God did give it to Moshe, but Moshe didn't necessarily understand what he was being given. Only the tradition itself, that's what it meant. Okay? Now listen to this. Rabbi Akiva eventually sees this monumental, game-changing sight. The sight of drips and drops of water penetrating a rock. And he says to himself, if even a rock which is hard can be penetrated by water which is so soft, how much more so the words of Torah, which are powerful like steel, can penetrate my heart, which is made of flesh. So even at that time, he wasn't your average shepherd, was he? Okay? He goes off to study. He goes for 12 years to study, comes back, goes again for another 12 years to study, comes home with an army of 24,000 students. They're all walking with him. Could you imagine this? As he's walking towards the city, the Talmud recounts, a woman comes running forward and she throws herself down at his feet and she's kissing the hem of his robe. his students stood up to push her away. Who's this woman? It's not appropriate, the rabbi. And Rabbi Akiva shoved them away and he said, this is my wife. Sheli v'shelachem, everything that I have and everything that you have, shelahi belongs to her. She stands up, they're walking together as royalty, so to speak, at this stage. They're coming back to the city, and Ben Kalba Savua finds out that this is his son-in-law. He wanted her to marry someone who was a scholar, and now this person that he thought was a nobody is actually a scholar. He comes to Rabbi Akiva and he says, I once swore that I would not give my daughter a penny if she didn't marry a scholar, she didn't marry someone worthwhile. And Rabbi Akiva said, well, if you would have known, if you could have foreseen that this is what it would have turned out to be, would you have made the neder? Would you have promised or swore? Ben Kalba Savua said, no, I would not. If that's the case, Rabbi Akiva says, then your neder, your swearing, was based on a set of principles and pretenses which actually are not true. So therefore, you're not bound by your neder. That's called pitchei nedarim. Would you have made this promise, would you have sworn, if you would have known this? If that's the case, you would not have, then that's how we can undo the neder. Okay, is that clear? Says the Mishnah, imagine in that moment, Ben Kalba Savua says to his daughter, if you marry him, I'm cutting you out, you're never getting a penny from me. Could you imagine if in that second, Rachel, his daughter, had said to him, well, what if he becomes, I think he's great. What if he actually becomes a Torah scholar? In a moment of anger, what would he have said? Even then. He'll never become one. Even if he becomes the biggest scholar in the world, I'm still not giving you a penny. In that angry moment, he's liable to turn off, to shut off that exit ramp that he could have used had you kept your mouth shut. You push the envelope and now he shuts another door. So the first thing is, don't appease when someone's angry. The second thing is, don't comfort when someone's sitting in front of a dead person at the house of a shiva. The third thing is, don't ask a person too many questions, when he makes an eder. Oh, do you mean to include even if, yes, I do mean to include that. He wouldn't have even thought of it. Now you said it, now he's, third one. And finally, ve'al tishtadeh lir'oto b'sha'at kalkalato. Don't attempt to see him or her in their time of anger. As I said earlier, each one of these has a source in the Torah. How do you know you don't ask someone in a time of their neder? When Moshe sinned with the rock, Hashem swore that Moshe would never enter into the land of Israel. All the way in Devarim, the pasuk says, "Va'etchanan el Adonai ba'et hahi lemor," and I asked God at that time, saying, not at the time when God swore, but rather when we moved all the way to the border of Israel, right before we crossed into the land of Israel, I asked Hashem then, please can you let me in? What do we learn from that? Says the Midrash, that Moshe waited to ask God this question until much later. What did God say? What did Moshe say to Hashem? He says, please can I go into the land of Israel? You swore that I couldn't come in. How about if I don't go in as leader? How about if I don't even go in alive? According to one opinion, the Midrash says that Moshe asked God, how about if I go into Eretz Israel as a reincarnation? Even if I'm reincarnated not as a human. Moshe wanted desperately to experience on some level, on some plane, the Kedusha of Eretz Israel. But could you imagine that God would have been asked by Moshe at the time itself? How about this way? How about that way? Did you hear what I said? Which part of no? Don't you understand? So we learn that from there. Finally, the Mishnah concludes and says, Al tishtadeh l'roto b'shat kalkalato. Don't try and see him or her in the time when they're at rock bottom. Where do we learn this from? Bartanura explains, Vaya'asu lahem chagurot. When Adam and Chava sinned in the original sin, they ate from the tree of knowledge. It says that they were embarrassed. And when they were embarrassed, what happened? They sewed for themselves loincloths. Ya'asu lahem chagurot. Only after they had managed to cover their nakedness does the pasuk say, Vayishmeu et kol Hashem, and they heard the sound of Hashem coming through the garden. Hashem waited for them to be able to not be humiliated, embarrassed by their sin, by their mistake, and only once they had recovered some shred of dignity, that was when Hashem said, "Hello, right? I'm here." Right? That was when it happened. So we learn from here this concept of not appearing to someone in the time of their difficulty. So now, I want to try, as we always do, to take the drone shot of the Mishnah over here, because I'm sure you're aware already. The Mishnah doesn't only mean kalkalato. When someone makes a mistake, it's not only referring to a sin. When someone cannot be comforted, we don't only mean that they can't be comforted when someone's died, when they've had a shiva call. We don't only mean that you don't ask someone too many questions when they've made a neder and the question is about undoing the neder. Rather, we're speaking about 4 different instances in the human experience. 4 different times when a person should be careful not to intrude, not to step over the line and maintain their silence or the status quo. What is the first example? En al tiratzet chavercha b'shat ka'aso. Let's try and come up with, we workshop together, some examples of what it means to not try and placate someone when they're angry. Give me an example. What do we got?
The way you explain it, you don't...
Sorry?
The way you explain it, you don't trigger anyone who is in time of anger.
I'm asking, give that clothing. What does that look like? We're in the day-to-day life of a woman growing up in 2021, or a man, or a boy, or a potato head, whichever, right? Someone growing up in today's day and age, where do you find examples of this, of not trying to placate someone when they're angry? Most obvious one in the world. Politics. Don't even bother. Not when they're angry. Not when they're heated up. Because when they're angry, they'll say anything. When you're backed into a corner by your own anger, by your own self-righteousness, we're willing to say anything. And we'll drive stakes into a relationship that just don't need to be there. Are you saying? I love that one. Someone says something, and then you feel the stupid need, I feel the stupid need to reframe and recategorize what they've said. So they say, I don't need your help. Are you saying that? Expand. Right? To places previously unvisited by human explorers. Do you mean to say that? I remember once I had a job, and my boss actually asked me a question. They said, we really want you to take over this school and start working in the school. And I had reasons based on what we were doing at the time, where we felt that going into that school was the wrong thing to do. So now we have a boss, and the boss is asking us to do something that we thought wasn't a good idea. So I said, I don't think we want to do that. We've kind of thought this through, and we don't think that that's the right move now. And the person said, do you mean to say that if I ask you to go, if I make you go, you're gonna quit your job? Wait, what? Right? Expand. When you talk to someone in a moment of anger, what happens when you're angry? People find it very difficult when they're angry to be or to find any nuance. So people can't be generally good, but a little bit like this. Everyone is a demon or a saint. It's very hard. When you're thinking that way, the fine motor skills of your brain, they just shut down. And therefore, you wind up placing yourself, you box people in to positions that they don't really necessarily feel that they have to be in, but they wind up, fine, if that's how you're gonna play it, then I'm gonna do, right? That's how. So one example of this is politics. What other examples are there in family life? Go ahead, explain. Give me an example. Doesn't have to be real.
People have different opinions about money, or how to spend the money that they have, jointly or separately, and it becomes very ugly.
So let's explore that. So let's explore that example. There's a fight over money, right? And the anger is burning, is white hot. What happened? First you were fighting over money, but in the process of trying to placate the person, what did you wind up doing?
You probably put their ideas down, or their ideologies, or their wishes, their dreams, the whole thing.
Wow, that was a lot of different things right there, right? We started with a disagreement about money, about dollars, and next thing we know, I love these lines. Two best words to stay away from in any argument. You always, right? You always, whoa. If you catch yourself saying that, bite your tongue and walk out the room, right? Because you're about to take this fight and just literally spill it over everything, okay? So what started as an argument about money winds up now becoming a personal attack on the person's, you don't understand the value of money. You don't know the value. You're now calling the person lazy, entitled, selfish. Whoa. And the irony is that when someone else is angry and you try and placate them, almost always, you know what happens? You go from one angry person to two angry people. Very rarely does someone trying to placate someone else who's angry manage to stay calm themselves. Oh boy, that was a sisterly exhale right there. Okay, so we're going to move swiftly on, right? Yes.
When I think of the word appease, I think of like giving in to someone's request. Can it be interpreted that way too, or is this Mishnah specifically like appease as in like trying to calm them down, like as in like tell them, like belittle their, like could it be like they feel so desperate for something and you just want them to calm down so you give it to them? So like you're not allowing them to process their own emotion. I mean, it's the same thing in the end, but
I think even if it's the same thing, it actually addresses another incorrect response in the moment. The reason why I would assume that the Mishnah doesn't necessarily mean to say it only that way is because it doesn't fit the mold of quiet, 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 quiet. Right? But in truth, there's different kinds of quiet. Like there's a quiet in terms of speaking versus not speaking, but there's a quiet also of not standing up to the person in that time of anger. So it says don't appease your friend in the height of anger. Actually, it doesn't say don't fight with your friend when he's angry. Want to hear something really interesting? I was on a Pesach program a few years ago. And on this Pesach program, the guy who was running the program decided to bring in a hospitality staff from New Zealand. So do you ever meet people from down under, from New Zealand, from Australia? Right? They're remarkably chill. which he thought would be a great thing to have, because there's nothing more antagonistic than Jews arriving with other Jews to a hotel only to find out that the other guy who paid the same as you has a better room than you. Right? You want to be in this room, you want to be on this floor. You want to be next to this one, you don't want to be next to that one. You like your reservation dinner time, you don't like your reservation for dinner times, right? So he figured if he had this hospitality staff from New Zealand, they would keep everything much worse. You know why? Because people would come all heated up and they would be very angry about a problem, and these hospitality staff helpers would just not get flustered by it at all. And that got people so angry because they felt like you're not taking my anger seriously. If you're this calm, you clearly don't get why I'm upset. You don't understand the value of this. You think that I'm overreacting, and I'm not overreacting. You don't understand what this is going. Do you understand how this makes me feel? Yeah. So on some level, maybe when the Mishnah says, Al teratzeh et chaverecha b'shat ka'aso, it's almost better to fight with them than to try and appease them by saying it's not so bad, or even a great one. You should have more emunah. Vomit. You should have more emunah. You should have better timing. Okay? Yeah. So that's what the Mishnah is suggesting. Say nothing. But what she's suggesting is maybe the Mishnah is going even a step further. Like saying nothing whatsoever, maybe kind of giving in to someone in the time of their anger teaches them that they can get what they want when they get angry. Interesting. Yeah?
It's also very counterintuitive. When somebody's very angry about something, maybe you said that there was no intention to cause that anger, or the meaning is misrepresented or misunderstood. I have found that to not, I get the reason for staying quiet, but if you stay quiet and the meaning is not actual, I find, personally, that's not successful, but I find that my wish is to clarify, which tends to also make things worse.
So I read from Rabbi Pinchasi on this point. Rabbi Pinchasi said, a lot of times, what do? You try and make the guy feel better about it. Oh, they didn't mean it.
Or they actually didn't mean it.
What do you open them up to responding? Yes, they did. They always, yeah. Right? Oh, they didn't mean it. You know, you see, well, when they treat the other people, they don't speak to anyone else that way. You almost force the person to like guard their own little space of anger. Like, don't take this away from me. Can't you just leave me alone with this? Like, I want to sulk here, licking my wounds with my anger. This is my security blanket. Don't take it away from me. You're going to try and defend the other person. What, now you're on their side? You're supposed to be my mom, my friend, my sister, my family, right? Trying to get that guy to see some sort of perspective at this moment. Rabbi Pinchasi writes, he says, it winds up leaving them feeling, one, you are insensitive to the depth of my pain. And this is the truth about all of them. You're trying to comfort a mourner in the time of their mourning. You are insensitive to the depth of my pain. You do not understand it. You think that I'm overdoing it. You think it's not so bad. Okay? Number two, he says, you're siding with the attacker. Like I just said from Rabbi Pinchasi. And the third thing is that you just don't understand. Not that you're not just being insensitive, but you don't understand me. You're disconnected from me. We're not speaking the same language. We're no longer in the same place. So on a certain level, you're trying to help them, but the greatest thing that they could use in this moment is feeling that someone's on their side. Open up your mouth, show that you don't understand, and you lose that position. You lose the ability to give them the comfort of them feeling that they have you with them. Okay? By virtue of the fact that you just showed me that you don't understand. by telling me it's not so bad, by telling me I should have emunah, by telling me that that wasn't their intention, by telling me.
Issues or they're going through something.
Oof. They have issues. So not only am I in pain, now I'm insane. It rhymes. Yeah.
You're the person that they're angry with.
Sorry?
What if it's not that they're just angry, but that you are the person that they are angry with? In other words, and they have misunderstood where do you
So what do most people do? Most people initially defend. So you attack me. Why did you do this? What do? Immediately defend. If you're kind of like a little bit more in control of yourself, you pull. Remember that? There's that totally inappropriate song that, like, for some reason made it into children's movies called I Like Big Butt, right? So that's the big butt. I'm sorry, but what was I supposed to, right? A great one. I'm sorry you feel that way.
That's intended.
Oh, why?
That's provocative.
I didn't do that. I didn't do anything wrong. You're overreacting. It's just your decision to feel that way because of what's going on here. If you would just decide not to feel insulted, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So a lot of times when we engage in the moment of anger, not only are they not ready to hear it, we also are not ready for the ferocity of their anger. So we'll wind up taking positions ourselves on the issue that we don't need to take. But because we're feeling so defensive, then not only are they locked in, we're also locked in. Children talking about, they don't like their school, or, when there's a conversation about, who they're dating. Ooh, these things they're like white hot button issues. Okay? Yeah. We'll come back to that in the end, right? I think there's one simple answer in case you kind of have ADD and you're not going to make it to the end. Just keep your mouth shut. Just keep your mouth shut. Not forever. Not forever. Just a little bit of time. Like, let the anger subside a little. Okay? You want to talk to him about comfort? Right after Shiva's over. Come to him during the Shloshim. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Al tenachameu b'sha'a shemeto mutar lefanav. I think the first thing is when a person can't let go. So one of these things is when you're keeping quiet and you're not engaging because someone cannot let go. The second thing is when a person won't let go. I want to share with you that there's a feeling that I hear sometimes from people that are mourning, where they feel that any feeling of a sense of comfort is a betrayal to the person that they lost. If I'm smiling, how could I smile? If I'm they feel guilty enjoying life at all. They feel like they need to be miserable because that's honoring the life of this person is by me feeling miserable, by me not allowing myself any joy. These are such complex emotions. Like, you understand, it's sometimes, again, not realizing the intensity and the complexity of these feelings. You're really stepping into something which is really, So I want to share with you a beautiful idea from the Sefarno. The Sefarno writes that when Yaakov came down to get married to one of the daughters of Lavan, he meets, before he visits the town proper, he sees a well, because the wells usually were situated in the outskirts of town. That's where they had grazing land and grass. So he sees the shepherds all gathered around the well. He comes to the shepherds and he needs directions. He didn't have Google, Drive or Waze or whatever, Google Maps. So he says to the shepherds, he says, Hayada'atem Lavan ben Nachor. Do you know Lavan ben Nachor? They're like, do we know him? We've all been victimized by him. This guy is the chief number one, con man in the world. He was called Lavan Ha'arami, right? He was Arami from Aram, right? The words Arami spell the word Ramai. Ramai. Ramai means a trickster, a con artist. Arami, Aleph, Resh, Mem, Yud, is the same letter as the word Ramai, Resh, Mem, Aleph, Yud. And it is only a trickster that could tell you that he's a trickster and hide it from you. Oh yeah, my name is Lavan Arami. Oh, I thought it was Ramai. Oh, you're probably getting mixed up. No, you got the letters wrong. I'm Armenian. Okay? I always thought to myself, how cool would it be if he actually moved to Armenia in order to be able to say this? Anyway, that is like next level. So he asks the shepherds, he says, Hayadatim, do you know this guy, Lavan ben Nachor? The shepherds say yes. He says, Hashalom lo. How goes it with him? Says the Sforno, why was Yaakov asking them? What was it, chit chat? Today, we talk about, you talk around the water cooler, at work. So back then, this is Yaakov's water cooler game, because he had a good, strong chatting game with the shepherds at the well. So, this guy, Lavan ben Nachor, how's he doing? Sforno says, Yaakov's about to go and engage him in conversation. He's about to go and ask him for the hand of his daughter in marriage. He wanted to understand, where was Lavan at right now? Did he just lose his business? Had someone died in the family? Was everyone healthy? Was he doing really well? The way you talk to someone, really in a normative, healthy conversation, should reflect the context that both they and you are in. This is why we make so many horrible mistakes on text, on email. Can't see the person's face. They can't see yours. They don't know that was autocorrect. Oh my gosh. I'll share with you one of my most embarrassing moments of my life. I'm blushing even thinking about it. So there's a very big tzaddik, a very wealthy donor, who donates perhaps the most money in the world to outreach programs, to Kiruv, reaching out to Jewish people to connect them to their Judaism. The biggest heart, the kindest man. He happens also to suffer from Parkinson's. So I sent him a text. I found out that that he was in London, and I sent him a text because I wanted to meet up with him. And the text that I sent him was, "Hey, shalom, tzaddik!" Exclamation point. Send. Only after I sent it did I start losing my mind, because it auto-corrected the word shalom to shaking. I texted a man with Parkinson's, "Hey, shaking tzaddik." That's what I... Delete. No, there's no delete. You can't delete text. You can delete WhatsApp for up to, I think it's 7 minutes. I think it's 7 minutes. You could delete a WhatsApp before they open it. Yeah. You could also delete it, by the way, even after they open it, so they can't save it. Unless they're quick enough to screenshot it, because they realize you'll probably delete it in their inbox. It deletes it in their inbox, not just in yours. I want 10% on this one, by the way. Right? Isn't that crazy? But there's no taking it back. And I'm like, shalom, shalom, shalom. No, shalom, not shaking. Horrible. Yeah? So, one of the things that is important in communication is to understand the context that you're in and the context that they're in. And sometimes someone says something to you that's so horrible that you know them, they're such a nice person, they would never say that. I would like to believe in my heart of hearts that he thought as soon as he got the text, there is no way that Rabbi Fari would have sent me as a Parkinson's sufferer, hey shaking tzaddik. I would never have done. I would love to believe that. But Yaakov asks, because he teaches us one of the laws of healthy, of effective communication is to always understand the context, the state of mind that somebody is in. Only 2 days ago, I went down, 2 days ago, I went down to Lakewood to go for my birthday dinner with my parents. And I didn't want my parents to have to schlep up here, so we went down to Lakewood to eat out with my parents and my brothers and sisters. Anyway, I meet this guy, and I say to him, "Oh, hey, how you doing? I can't believe it. It's been so long. I heard you got married." And he goes, "Yeah, that lasted a week." Found out something that he could not have known beforehand. They were married for 1 week. I didn't know. Did I not cause pain? I still caused pain. I wish I would have known. What I'm pointing out is that sometimes the most innocent comment without context can be the most hurtful thing in the world. If you don't know that someone lost a child, if you don't know that someone lost their job, if you don't know and you just talk about it, blasé, it can be very, very hurtful. I still remember a student that I'm very close with. I was sharing a story about a cancer patient. She got up from the class and stormed out. "How dare you? Don't you know I lost my brother to cancer?" I had no idea. So what, you're not allowed to say anything anywhere? The answer is, in a public setting, it's easier, obviously, it's lighter. But when you're talking directly to someone, especially when they're going through something, anger or loss, right? Or some sort of restrictive behavior. When we talk about neder, we don't only mean swearing. We mean when someone is engaging in something where they're locking themselves into something, right? Sometimes you're putting yourself or them in a very difficult position. You know, I know kids that the only reason why they went through with a marriage, only reason, was because their parents doubted them on it. They doubted them on it. So instead of the parent coming and saying, "What about this? Are you sure? What do you think?" What did they do? They came and said, "This person is not for you, scum of the earth, scorched earth policy." The person who loves this person, maybe they're not perfect, maybe they're not right for them, but they love this person. What do they feel the need to do? They defend them. That's what you think about him? No, fine. You guys are not invited to the... And they doubled down, even though maybe approached properly, they would have thought about it. They would have given it time. They would have seen how it would shake out. Be careful when someone is engaging or having a conversation about something where they're going to be locked in by their decision. That locking in, you can push them to a place by challenging them in a way which is maybe not helpful, or, I find also what works really well is instead of saying something, asking something. You know? Have you thought about? Is very different than I'm seeing this, don't do, this is the wrong, you know, like asking a very broad, a gentle question. Are you sure? Are you sure that this person is right for you? You know, I noticed something, I'm sure, you know, it's even better than that, even better than have you, will you, maybe look at, you know, it's even better than that. I'm sure you already noticed this, and I'm sure you're dealing with it. Almost give them the credit before it's due. Like I'm sure you're working this out, and you're on this. But I just thought I'd have to just say something that I thought maybe, you know, I'm sure you did realize it, but just to err on the side of caution, like, because that gives the person the dignity of being able to say, yeah, I know, I'm dealing with it, we're dealing with it, we're figuring it out, we're getting some help. You know, we're getting couples therapy, whatever it might be, you know? It allows the person the dignity of kind of saying, and what did you save there? You saved staying on their team. You didn't force the person across the table opposite you. Yeah? Let's wrap this up with Al tishtadel lir'oto b'shat kalkalato. The Mishnah seems to be talking about, why would you want to see someone at their worst moment? Why would you want to see someone at rock bottom? Why would you want to be present for their failure? Why? You know, there's a very powerful line that we say in, well, not everybody says it, but it's a line in Tehillim. It comes from the introductory chapters or paragraphs to Lecha Dodi, to the Shabbat evening prayer. It says, my father always used to sing it. 40 shana kut bidor, va'omar am to'eh levaveh. Remember that? 40 years. Akut bidor. I fought with a generation. Moshe is saying. Right? 40 years I fought with them in the desert. Va'omar, and I said, Am to'eh levavhem. They are a people of wayward hearts. Yeah? To'eh, like a mistaken heart. Turned away heart. Okay? What's fascinating is that I once read a beautiful interpretation of this. And that is, To'eh levav means that their heart is there. It kind of made a wrong turn at Albuquerque. You know, one of the things I think children most often don't understand about their parents, and sons and daughters-in-law most often don't understand about their in-laws, is that they're not monsters. And, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but people forget that. Your parents are not out to hurt you. Your in-laws want the best for their son and the person that they married. They do. And then what do people say? Oh, they have a funny way of showing it. Yeah, they do. They have a funny way of showing it. You think any parent who ever pulls out the I told you so card, do they enjoy it a little? Maybe. Maybe they're enjoying it a little too much. They're enjoying now the fallout. Told you he was wrong. Told you this was the wrong position. Told you were taking on too much risk. Told you shouldn't have, I told you the house was too expensive. Told you. A little bit. The little bit they enjoy maybe. The comeuppance of you not listening to their sage advice. A little bit. But the vast majority of what they're feeling, what are they trying to drive home? They're trying to make sure that this memory, that this lesson, that it sticks. Every parent, the child is crying, you put your arms around the parent. Baba, I told you not to. Why did you? What do you need to say that for? on some level, in a healthy relationship, I told you so, follow me here, is a ex post facto intervention. What we're trying to do is capture rock bottom, drive home the point at rock bottom, so that next time you see it coming. That's what an intervention is, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish. You let the guy fall and fall and fall and fall, and then when he's rolling on the floor in his own throw up, you say, look at yourself. You need help. Because up until that point, until he's lying on his own vomit, until he's homeless, until that stage is reached, what does a person say? What does every addict say? And addicts are not only to drugs, and they're not only to alcohol, and they're not only to gambling. People can be addicted to love. People can be addicted to people pleasing. People can be addicted to sex. People can be addicted to power. People can be addicted to anything. Addiction only means when you were so drawn, you were so moved by something that it ruins your life. You lose control over yourself, and that thing controls you. That's the definition of addiction, and it can apply to anything. You can be addicted to religion. You can. An intervention is when you see the person at their most vulnerable, and you say, you see? I told you needed help. Do you agree you need help now? So what is the Mishnah telling you? You can't stage an intervention? Al tishtadel. The word kind of gives it away. Don't attempt. Tishtadel means like you're trying. Don't try to see someone when they're broken. Is the Mishnah saying you can't have an intervention? Is that what it means? Yeah.
Maybe first it's not necessarily see that they're necessarily broken, but this is the opportunity where eyes can be open. So maybe they're not broken. They're done with. Like maybe they'll look at them as lost. They're not lost. They're just now in the window. But I'm really concerned about the I told you so comment. I understand the opportunity. I think anything that starts with I at that moment and you're too, it's not going to land the way of them really saying, okay, I'm going to move on from this. Maybe it is better. Now you're here. You probably don't want to be here again. Let's know this can happen. This can happen. We can get to this point. Maybe the we is better.
So how does that fit in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says, don't attempt to see them in their time of despair, of brokenness. What do you want from my life? I'm trying to get the person out of this. This is the only way that I know how to make the person realize that they have a blooming problem. Yeah, sorry. You look like you're about to explode. Go.
I was gonna say, when the person's rolling around in their vomit, you saying "I told you so." It's not gonna make them it's like stomping on their face deeper into it. Like they're not gonna now all of a sudden wake up and say, "Oh my God, you're right." Wow, it's not like saying "I told you so" is hurting them even more.
So we do know that interventions work. We do know that. That's why they exist, right? And we do know that people who are the most recalcitrant, people who push off in every single scenario, they keep, denying. We do know that these things do work, okay? So, but if you need that, so the obvious thing is, what the Mishnah seems to say is, it's not going to work. In fact, you know what it will do? It will actually, it's going to push them so deep in that they can't get out. They're so broken. You know what? This is an example. A rabbi in Israel, and I want to come back to, you said you did some work with us, because I think you could share some insight. There's a rabbi in Israel, one of the Hasidic rabbis. I think he's the Rebbe of Slonim. If you looked at him in the street, you'd think, big fur hat, pale beard, everything. He's got the look, he's got everything. He says, we made a terrible mistake. They plastered the streets in Israel at the time. The super religious community in Israel at the time said that having an iPhone is like avodah zarah. Why'd they say that? Because these are people who live an elevated life. They don't have TVs. They don't have inappropriate images in their home. They don't have opportunity to gamble. They don't have whatever. All these things that now you have in the palm of your hand, they don't have that. It's not just the phone. It's the entirety of everything that comes with it. So they thought, you know what, let's push this away. You know what the rabbi said? He said, we made a grave mistake by saying that the iPhone is Avodah Zarah. You know why? Because here's a guy who's 18 years old. So he made a mistake. So he fell. So he bought himself an iPhone when he shouldn't have, because that's not the community or the family he comes from. He made a mistake. He did something wrong. Making him feel like he's an idol worshiper, what does it do? He says, oh, I'm an idol worshiper? Fine. I'm throwing it all away. There's even a terminology for Hasidic people that run away from their background and go from, beard and payas to nothing. You know what they call them? Not off the derech. Nope. I was very surprised to learn this terminology. I had never heard it before. It's called a tuna bagel. A tuna bagel. If you could say it in like Hasidic parlance, then it's even more authentic. Yeah, a tuna bagel. Yeah, yeah. I have no idea. Maybe it's supposed to recall like the Shtreimel. I'm not sure. The bagel. I'm not sure. Maybe it's saying that their Judaism has now been kind of diminished from that to like a standard Jewish staple, but which I would have thought was a bagel, lox, and cream cheese, but I don't know. Okay, that's the terminology. It's not mine. Overstating someone's sin makes them feel, what the hell? Telling someone when they're hurting, you're a disgrace. Oh, I'm a disgrace? Why should I even bother trying then? I'll just throw it all away. So on the first level, the Mishnah is telling you, don't try and see the person in that time, because you know what? Whether you say something or not, and I found this so beautiful, each one of the other three are about speaking versus not speaking. Don't appease him when he's angry. Don't comfort him when he's mourning. Don't ask him what he means when he makes a neder. The last one doesn't say, don't attempt to make him better when he's broken. It says, Al tishtadel lir'oto. Don't even go see him. Do not be present when he's at rock bottom, when he's at the bottom of this abyss. And where's the proof? Where God actually waits to even come into the room. Like they hear him coming, after they cover up, if you will. So it illustrates that God was, so to speak, not there when they screwed up. All right? It's almost telling you not to be there. And I think that this is really maybe what the Mishnah is telling us. The Mishnah is saying that there are times when a person is so humiliated, they're so ashamed of their behavior, even if you don't say anything, even your presence. Remember, we said the most precious thing to a mourner is your presence in the room. The most difficult thing to bear for a person in their most humiliating moments is the fact that you're there. You don't even need to say anything. Like the context is so loud, the reproof is so bold and obvious that just you being there, they can't even make eye contact with you. They can't bear for you to see them in that space. So the Mishnah is telling you even one step further. And I think that actually one of the rules of an intervention is that an intervention is not you and the person. Who comes to an intervention? You, the friends, the family. One person is there to tell you off. A group of people are there to support you. I think the cataclysmic difference between one person being there and you feeling that intense shame versus the family coming around and giving you a big hug is effectively what we're speaking about. And I think when you said earlier That the difference is, are you saying you, right? Or are you saying we? It's everything. Someone is fine, all of a sudden their wife finds out that they've been gambling. I mean, people have lost their whole lives. It's not some money. People who they cleaned out their bank accounts, they maxed out their credit cards, they gave up the deed to their house, even the car that they drove in to the casino, they signed over the deed to the house. And guy had to call his wife in the middle of the night, ask her to come pick him up. Of course, a marriage like that doesn't survive, right? Could it have survived? Again, I'm not talking about them specifically. Yes, the answer is yes. But I think that there's one condition. It's not where the wife says to her husband, you need help. It's when the wife says to her husband, we need to get help. There are lots of marriages where neither one of them has a penny to their name, and they figure it out. Yeah, they can't go out to eat, they can't go on vacations, but you could probably make enough with minimum wage to put food in your mouth. You can go to a homeless shelter with your wife. You can survive these things if there's a team. One of the first things you should say to someone in a time when they're broken is, I'm on team you. Whatever you need to bounce back from this, I'm here to help you with. I'm on your side. We will get through this together. That's not coming, and I think that's why God could not appear to Adam and Chava. Because God can't come with anybody. It's only Him. It's only God. So that would have felt like, it would have come across as a time of judgment in that seminal moment in their lives. Overall, I think the Mishnah is telling us that the very first thing you want to do, and I think this is maybe the best advice for everything, is assess the situation. Assess the person's capacity to hear whatever you want to say. And if you've thought it through and you think you know the right thing, take another minute. Nobody ever died because you didn't speak for 2 whole minutes. I think that's the first lesson of the Mishnah. The second lesson of the Mishnah is, you never know what's going on in another person's universe. So if you could figure out a way to almost illustrate to them, through your presence, through your silence, through your words, right, that it's not them versus you, that's probably the healthiest thing for everybody involved. I'll end with this. I don't want to tell you the whole story, but I'll end with this. My father was a principal in a school, and there was a boy who stole somebody else's wallet in school. End of the story, again, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but end of the story was when my father called him into the office. My father said, did you happen to see, one of the boys lost his wallet. Did you happen to find the wallet? The kid says no. Maybe he's 5 or 6 years old. Nope. My father can see, he's 5 years old, there's a wallet in his back pocket, bulging out of the back. This other kid had brought his birthday money to school with him. $80. My father says, I see you have a big wallet in your pocket. The kid says, yeah. And listen to this, the chutzpah. He pulls it out. He goes, I have $79. $79. My father said, that's a specific amount. He said, I had 80, but I spent $1 on a soda. So again, the likelihood of 2 5-year-olds 25 years ago, coming to school with $80 on the same day is, like they say, 0 to nil. Okay? So my father said to him, he goes, Maybe you found the wallet and then forgot that it belonged to someone else. You wanted to return it, but like you put it in your pocket, but you forgot that it belonged to someone else. The kid says, nope, it's mine. My father said, it's such a shame because this boy who lost his wallet, today's his birthday. And the money he brought to school wasn't just regular money. It was the money that his uncle gave him. He was supposed to buy a Nintendo, and he brought it to school because he was so excited, and his mother told him not to bring it to school because he'll probably lose it. You think about how bad this boy feels on his birthday. He's probably going to cry on his birthday. He's probably going to go home and they're going to all have cake and he's just going to be crying. And the kid all of a sudden goes, oh, like, how kids think that they're fooling you, right? Like they're a criminal mastermind at 5, right? Kids like, oh, just remembered that wallet. Yeah, that wallet is whatever he came up with. But one of the most beautiful things that I always remember about that was that my father built this kid so many different bridges to get home. He knew all he needed to do was take the wallet and tell the kid you're expelled. Didn't expel him, didn't suspend him, didn't punish him, didn't yell at him, didn't scream at him. Gave him a whole bunch of ways home where he could maintain his dignity. Yeah? And then let the kid understand the suffering, the pain that he was causing another boy if he kind of stuck with the route that he chose. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's the embodiment of this Mishnah. Thank you all for coming. This is just, I can't tell you how much joy this brings me. Thank you everyone for coming. Getting to see faces, Deborah, we haven't seen. 1 year Deborah hasn't been back. Last year she hadn't been back in 1 year. So we're getting our very own COVID snowbirds are returning home to roost. Welcome back, everybody.